Slate. What's going on, guys? Wei Koh here from Revolution here with my Watchdog Bandit. Really happy to celebrate the third collaboration that we've done with Chopard L.U.C. And I'm going to put you down because I have to talk now. So as you guys may know, our first collaboration with Chopard L.U.C happened back in 2018. It was a 10-piece homage to the very first watch that Chopard had ever launched. It was the L.U.C 1860. We did that watch with a white gold case and a massive gold salmon-colored dial, featuring, of course, the famous caliber 1.96 inside. First micro rotor movement to be bidirectional winding was cost certification and Geneva seal. Our second collaboration with Chopard happened last year. It was a 5-piece limited edition of an incredible L.U.C Chopard Flying T Tourbillon, also configured to look like the very original Chopard L.U.C 1860. So that watch was 36.5 mm in diameter and only just over 8 mm in terms of thickness, which is pretty damn incredible for a flying tourbillon with a stop function that's cost certified, Geneva seal, and has bidirectional winding for its micro rotor as well. Well, this year we have the great pleasure of announcing our third collaboration with Chopard L.U.C, which is this watch. And this is the Chopard L.U.C QF Jubilee Luminous scientific dial watch made specifically with us. You guys may remember the name QF Jubilee because that was the name of a very successful limited edition that was launched last year by Chopard for its 25th anniversary. That was a 25-piece limited edition of the Qualité Flurry watch in steel, for the first time in steel, as all Qualité Flurry watches before that have always been made in precious metal. So Qualité Flurry is actually one of my favorite initiatives. It was created in 2004 by 3 brands, Chopard leading the way with Parmigiani Fleurier and of course Beauvais as well, all 3 residents of Fleurier. And the whole idea behind Qualité Flurry was to establish the highest level of independent testing for watches in the world. The other thing that they wanted to do was also test completed watches, because back in the day, in 2004, people were only testing movements. So cost certification was just a movement, but this was for the first time a test for a complete watch, which was groundbreaking. So what did the test consist of? Well, it consisted of a significant amount of torture, and we're going to get to that later, but we'll first go through the first couple of criteria. So criteria number 1, which is actually really cool, is that everything in the watch head had to be made in Switzerland, and you had to prove that every single component, every single part, all your material was actually from Switzerland, and that was really cool. Criteria number 2 was an aesthetic certification for its quality of finish. Now, this is really interesting too, because there's other certifications, like for example Metas, that you could say is actually perhaps even more stringent in terms of performance, and I agree, Metas is badass, but Metas only objectively tests performance. It doesn't give you any guarantee in terms of where watches are made, so on and so forth. So for me, in some ways, Qualité Fleury is a more complete test, because criteria number 1 is that everything in the watch head has to be made in Switzerland, and criteria 2, it means it has to be finished to a very high level. Criteria number 3 is going to sound familiar to you, and that's cost certification. That means every single movement is then sent to COSC, which is the Control Official Suisse de Chronometre, which is an independent body that tests watches to certify them as chronometers. You guys are probably familiar with Rolex. Rolex probably sends, like, I don't know, 800 to 1 million watches a year to COSC. Every one of which is certified as a chronometer. So for a Qualité Fleury watch to be certified, it first has to go to COSC, where it will be tested at 3 different temperatures and 5 different positions. After passing that test, it will go for an additional 15 days running and being retested in different positions before it's certified. Now, throughout that entire period, the movement has to perform between -4 and +6 for it to be certified. And if it does, you get a little certification that says your movement is a chronometer, and that comes with your watch as well. Right? But it doesn't stop there, because criteria number 4, which was really where the torture started, was chronofiable. And every Qualité Fleury watch that was created, that model had to pass a chronofiable. Now, okay, let me point out to you that not every single watch was tested in this way. So how it works is chronofiable, if you're making between 1 and 100 watches, you have to pick 5 watches to get tested. But that's still a hell of a lot of testing, because chronofiable is brutal, right? So there's, first of all, an aging test, and these tests are designed to measure the pull and push forces on the stem of the crown. If it has pushers, they will repeatedly push the pushers over and over again. If there's a bezel to your watch, it will turn it multiple directions for a very long period of time. Then there is a shock resistant test known as the mouton pendule, where the watch is placed in a holder and this massive hammer smacks it on the side and sends it flying. And then watches are also tested for magnetic resistance and as well for water resistance. So taken as a whole, it's one of the most brutal series of tests that watches are subjected to. Then criteria number 5, which is the famous Flurry Test. Now, what's very important here, like COSC, every single watch has to go through this, but now no longer just a movement, but as a complete watch. So every single Qualité Fleury watch, and this is probably why there was such a high attrition rate for every brand that submitted watches there, the watch is placed on a robotic arm that simulates wear over a certain period of time. It goes through very active phases, and the active phases, from what I've seen, can be brutal in terms of the turning and twisting of the arm, and it goes through more passive phases. In the end, the watch has to perform between 0 and +4 seconds, or it fails. If it passes, then every single watch is then given a specific certification with the case number and the movement number, and that's when you have a Qualité watch. Wow, right? So you have to imagine, like, what kind of brand would subject itself to this kind of crazy amount of testing? Well, it's a brand like Chopard L.U.C. Why? Well, from the very beginning, back in 1997, when Chopard launched its very first in-house watch, the 1860, Karl-Friedrich Scheufele always insisted on independent testing. He always insisted on cost certification and Geneva seals, because he wanted to demonstrate empirically to the world that his watches were amazing. So it makes sense that that kind of guy would also be the guy behind a test like Qualité Flurry. Interestingly, a couple months ago, I was just outside of the building where Qualité Flurry, the testing facility, is housed. And I realized actually that there's no longer a participation by Beauvais and by Parmigiani Fleury. That's not a knock on them, but I guess they decided that it wasn't really something that was strictly necessary. So what's going on with Qualité Fleury? Well, these 25 watches came out of Qualité Fleury. So Chopard L.U.C seems to be independently keeping it going because of the integrity of Karl-Friedrich Scheufele. So what is this watch? Well, as I said, it's the second time that a Qualité Fleury watch has been made in steel, but what a beautiful watch it is. So one of the things that I've always dug about the Qualité Fleury watches back in 2005 when they were first launched was this beautiful case, which only came in gold until last year. And what's so beautiful about it is check out those lugs with this beautiful manta ray flare to them as well, like where they're soldered, which is really amazing. Also is that little tiny step on the interior surface of the lugs is high polished as well. So there is no shortcomings here when it comes to the quality of the finish of this watch. Polished in steel to this mirror polish is absolutely stunning, and housing, of course, an amazing movement, which is derived from the caliber 1.96 bidirectional micro rotor, and with a beautiful finish, because again, finish is very important for you to certify as Qualité Fleury, and cost certified because you have to pass cost in order to be Qualité Fleury. But let's talk about the dial of this watch, which is where our work happened. So when we were given the opportunity to make our own 25-piece steel Qualité Fleury Jubilee edition, we were thinking, well, what should we do? I mean, this is the watch that's the most tested in the world and needs to have a scientific dial. So what did we do? We started looking through scientific dials that we were inspired by from the 30s and the 40s and the 50s. And we looked at sector dials. And bear in mind that the Qualité Fleury watch that was launched last year has a very beautiful blue and silver sector dial. That watch actually has a dial that is in fact derived from the very original gold watch in 2005. That was Qualité Fleury certified from Chopar. But we wanted to go down a different path. And whatever we looked at, we couldn't quite find the right combination of indexes, sector track, and color of the dial until Karl-Friedrich Scheufele and I decided to consult with someone that we both mutually admired, and that gentleman is named Auro Montanari, or he goes by the nom de plume John Goldberger, but you guys know him as one of the world's greatest watch experts, especially for the era of the 40s and 50s. He came to Meyrin, and, where the Chopard HQ is situated, and we sat down and we looked through this veritable treasure trove of images that he had of these incredible scientific dials, and we finally started to look at a series that we love. And it was actually motivated by him. He said, listen guys, if you're gonna make a watch that's going to be the ultimate precision for this watch that is torture chested to the max, why don't you do a black luminous sector dial where the sector track is luminous and all the indexes are luminous as well. And you can play around with the color of the luminova that you use. So we would never want to create something that looks artificially aged. We just wanted to give it a hint of color, a slight hint towards jade, where it gives you this really wonderful contrast to the sun ray effect black dial underlying it. It is the first Qualité Fleury watch made in steel with a black luminous sector track, sunray finish on the dial with this amazing, beautiful jade colored luminova that's used for the sector track and for the indexes. And I want to show you this because I think this is where it gets really cool. As you can see here, when I put the UV light over it, that's what the lume signature is of this watch, and it's absolutely stunning. And I think the light signature of this watch in the dark is going to be amazing. 39 mm, 8.9 mm in thickness, a watch that's incredibly easy to wear. It's totally unique, and you know, listen, when you have this on your wrist, you know that you have a watch that's been certified to the very highest quality because it's a representation of the ethics of a guy named Karl-Friedrich Scheufele, which are impeccable. So that's it, guys. It's on this beautiful Barenia colored age strap, give it a little bit of a vintage flair, but I think it's fantastic. Thank you very much for joining me, and come check it out if you're in Singapore at the Revolution Watch Bar, 25 pieces. So Bandit, let me ask you, what would you imagine the price of such a wonderful piece of horology would be? So it's 21,700 Singapore dollars, which I think is actually really good value. That's just around 16,000 US dollars. So Bandit, I've been really good. Will you buy me this watch for Chinese New Year? Come on. Okay, thank you. She said yes.